The Reserve Bank of India will launch a central bank digital currency, or a digital rupee, if we can simply call it that. That was one of the big announcements in the budget by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. There's been a lot of excitement about this central bank digital currency, or what everybody calls it now as CBDC. It's a bit of a not a very easy short form, but we have to use it because there's nothing else to replace it right now. And this is supposed to be that digital currency which will sort of be an alternative to the cryptocurrencies, the whole cryptocurrency debate. Will India allow crypto? Will India ban crypto? Is crypto an asset? Is crypto a medium of exchange? All of that has been sidelined, and we are talking about central bank digital currency because India wants to have its own central bank digital currency. But a lot of things are still being processed and drafted about this CBDC. Professor Ila Patnaik has written a very detailed piece talking about what a CBDC is and analyzing the pros and cons of such a CBDC. And she will explain and take your questions on this today, which is a very, very topical issue. There's so much excitement about CBDC. Ila, excitement about CBDC. What exactly is a CBDC?
A CBDC is a central bank digital currency, as you rightly pointed out. It is just that instead of cash, a digital rupee will be issued. Now, the digital rupee will be equivalent in terms of being a legal tender as cash is. What is legal tender? Legal tender is where you cannot refuse payment in that currency. So like you cannot refuse payment in cash, somebody says, I have to fulfill this contract and I will pay you in cash. You up to a limit, government has put certain limits, but let's stick to the principles. You then if you are living in India, then you can say no if the person offers you the Thai baht or the US dollar or the British pound. But if what you're being given is rupees, you cannot refuse to take it. So, of course, given that, we have, somebody would have said, we already have digital rupees, we have Paytm and
Google Pay and Phone Pay.
So many, but they are not legal tender. What the RBI's currency would be legal tender. Now, an amendment was done to the RBI Act saying this in the finance bill earlier this month.
So this will be another way of using the banknotes we keep in our wallets, or the sum we have saved in our savings bank account. This is one more way of using the rupee. But there is this whole confusion about, is this a medium of exchange? Is it going to sit on our mobile phone, or is it going to sit on our computer, or maybe both? Is it just an asset which will be in some demat account somewhere? Do we know anything about that, Ila?
So the RBI has said that it will be both an asset and a medium of exchange. So you could have, I presume. So the full details are not out. So, what we're talking today will be based on what has already been said. And then, of course, we'll wait for further details. But as of now, it will be both a medium of exchange and an asset, which means you can hold it. So suppose they decide that they will be giving us wallets where we can hold our digital rupees, then we could, hold them. And they'll also be a medium of exchange. So as I said, the legal tender. So one can pay someone in these. So they are a medium of exchange.
Mm-hmm. So what is the need for a digital currency, Ila? I mean, we have so many forms. Of course, the Indian government has been talking about reducing the circulation of banknotes and making it more digital. It's easier to track. You cannot, it's easier to fight the menace of unaccounted illegal black money. Uh, all of that, but you also have all these digital modes of transaction. You have NEFT, RTGS, and we just talked about credit cards, debit cards, Paytm. So why do we need one more digital form of currency?
So a lot of central banks have started talking about why do we need this, and started actually coming out with white papers and stating very clearly what the objective of such a digital currency is. So for example, so 9 countries have adopted these, and we have them in the column, and the list generally tells you that these are very small economies. These are island states. So if your population is distributed over 300 islands, and suppose you did not have any form of digital payments, then during the pandemic, it became very difficult for a person on one island to say buy something from another, and the person could ship the good across because there was no digital payment system. So in that case, cash, even the use of cash became very difficult. That's been one of the reasons. The second reason has been that there are some countries where their economies are so weak and their currencies are so weak that there has been dollarization. So, to avoid dollarization means that people, instead of using their own currency, start using dollars. Yeah. And so they feel that, they will use digital currency to make it more attractive to hold their own currency. Now, in the case of India, those are not the reasons. And I suppose that the RBI at least I hope that the RBI will clearly come up and say what exactly are the reasons why they want to have a digital currency. Is it to replace some of the assets that like crypto, and that's something we've discussed, or is it to act as a medium of exchange because they're not happy with the KYC? And we do have a system in which India actually is one of the leading countries in terms of digital payments. So why would we need these? Maybe because our either when either payment banks or banks are expected to fail, so then there is an overnight risk. It's not much of a risk, but that's the risk. Or is it that our KYC systems are too weak, or is it something else? And the RBI would ideally come up with a white paper and say, why is it that we need a digital currency? Given that that didn't happen and the announcement already happened, it is, shall we say, behind the curve in terms of this discussion, in contrast with other central banks who usually do a discussion and a white paper and public comments before launching the currency, before an amendment to the Central Bank Act. So here that they've already gone ahead, but I guess they'll come up and say why they're launching this currency.
So the 3 countries you have mentioned in your column today, the link is already there in the notes of this show, and you can read the column there or on the print website. 3 of the 9 countries you mentioned are China, Nigeria, and the Bahamas. So 3 distinctly, so completely different from each other. And the Chinese digital renminbi has been talked about a lot for some time now, and that China is trying to go ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to a digital currency. But like you said, our reasons and the reason for India doing it has to be out there very clearly. The next point I wanted to touch upon was, will it be attractive as a medium of exchange, or will it be attractive as an asset? And you talk about the reasons for both.
Yeah. Now, just one point before that, YP, a lot of the discussion on the CBDC has been on the supply side. Will it be back to back equal to a rupee? So will it be stable? Will you be able to withdraw cash from your digital rupee account? Will you be able to convert it into cash? Will you be able to do transport transactions? Will it be interest bearing? What sort of technology will the RBI use? Will the technology be such that there's no 10-minute wait, as in some cases as for blockchain, because they said it will be on blockchain? And will it be pervasive? Will everybody have access? So those are the kind of supply side questions that have been discussed a lot. And so what we try to do here is we don't go into those supply side questions because there's adequate debate on that. I think what we focus on is the demand side. And the demand side means we already have assets and we already have medium of exchanges. Are we going to, as consumers, are you and I going to find it attractive to switch to the CBDC? So let's start with the CBDC as an asset. Now, what is the competing asset? The competing asset is pretty much crypto. I mean, that's the whole, I think, part of the idea of, when after the Supreme Court ruling and without getting a ban, despite the arguments, RBI seems to be suggesting that we'll bring in you guys want a digital currency, we'll bring in a digital currency. So how does it compare and contrast with existing cryptocurrencies? If you look at the usage of cryptocurrencies, then while in countries like the US, Wharton, which is an Ivy League school, accepts fee in crypto, right? So and many other places, have started accepting crypto. They say upfront that we will accept cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange. So we'll accept payments in cryptocurrency. But in India, nobody has done that. So then, yet you find that a lot of people are holding crypto. If you, look at the surveys and you look at some of the reasons why people say they're holding crypto, it's mainly because they think that the value of, let's say, Bitcoin, if that's what they're holding, is going to rise. Which means that it is not a stable currency. If it was back to back, then yes, it would be used. It was back to back equal to a rupee. And if it was a stable currency or stable coins, as they're often called, then yes, you would use it as a medium of exchange. But as long as these are non-interest bearing, right? So they're not giving you an interest. Why would you hold it? You hold it because you expect the value to go up. Now, if you're holding an asset for its speculative purpose, for the speculative value, you think that the value of the cryptocurrency you're holding is going to go up, then would you replace that with a stable digital rupee? We think unlikely. So in that one sense, which is, would this be an attractive asset to replace cryptocurrencies in India, where the cryptos are typically held not for medium of exchange, but for their speculative asset value? We think that's unlikely. So that's the first point of comparison in terms of the
attractiveness.
Attractiveness as an asset. I think the second thing is now, so is it attractive as a medium of exchange? For that, you have to compare it with the existing medium of exchanges. So cash, digital payments, or rather prepaid, pretty much, so Paytm kind of things, or bank transfers. So bank deposits are actually money because you do bank transfers. So M1, as we call it, that it's cash plus demand deposits. Okay, so a current account, a business has a current account with a bank, and that current account is a bank deposit. And it's actually money because it is used as a medium of exchange. A current account typically doesn't give you interest. So it's basically what the business uses as a medium of exchange. And now you think of whether we look at each of these three to see which may, there might be features for and against. There might be many elements to it. Does the digital rupee is a digital rupee more attractive? So let's compare it first with cash. Now, cash gives you anonymity, whereas a digital rupee would be fully traceable. So if the RBI gives an account, you will be able to trace it if it's in this, if it's as tokens. So there are two options: either there'll be accounts or there'll be tokens. Then also it can be traced because it moves digitally. And so for that purpose, for that one reason, it may be unattractive. But it may be attractive if, for convenience, you don't have to go to the bank, withdraw cash, you just have it in your wallet, you can pay anybody anywhere. All you do is walk around with your mobile phone, because most probably, so we don't know this, but most probably it will be available to you on your mobile phone. So you can hold that. Of course, you may have some issues with connectivity, remote areas. That has to be looked at and understood. But when you come to the second medium of exchange, which is digital payments, yes, it may be a substitute. It may be that, all these digital payment companies or digital wallets go out of business, because if the RBI is going to give you a digital wallet, there is no risk of failure of either the bank or the payment company. So, if a payment company, a PhonePe or a BharatPe or a whatever, goes under, then people holding that money with them will go under. But, as a sovereign-backed central bank, RBI is not going to go under. So the risk is not there. So yes, it might replace the business of wallets. Now, when you come to banks, it's very interesting, because no credit can be created by the RBI. And the whole banking system actually relies on this business of accepting deposits and lending money. So, the banks start losing business if people move to digital because of other reasons. So what banks might do is they might offer interest, especially if the digital currency is interest bearing. So we don't know whether it will be, but if it is interest bearing, then they could lose business. Cost of credit could go up. The total amount of, so either the RBI's total monetary, so it will be a liability of the RBI, right? So either it says, okay, these are my assets, and the same liabilities that I have, now I divide differently between cash and digital currencies. And so, basically it shrinks credit supply, both in terms of volume, and it pushes up its cost. So that's one of the likely implications that people are discussing in terms of what it will do to bank deposits. So those are the, broadly that's.
So this is such a fascinating issue, Ela. Even without the white paper, we seem to have so many wheels and wheels within wheels in this. And the next one you have talked about is retail CBDC versus wholesale CBDC. That's a complete different issue again.
Yeah, so that's now back to the supply side issue, and that will we talk about that because that will determine the demand. So currently, what do you have? You have first, what is retail and what is wholesale? Wholesale is if there are a few large institutions like banks, NBFCs, etc., who are given accounts in the RBI. So the RBI has a system, and RBI says, okay, you have an account with me. And it's just for those large financial institutions, or even small financial institutions, but it's limited to financial institutions, then it's wholesale. But suppose each one of us, the crores of us, all of us have, what is the latest number on the population?
1.4 billion,
whatever. So all of us can have an account with the central bank. Okay, that's if it is account based, not token, then that's retail, that each one of us will be able to hold an account with the central bank in which we will hold digital rupee. So instead of that piece of paper that we have, we'll have an account there. Now, of course, that has its complexities. RBI has to decide whether it wants to do that or not. And again, as I said, if it does give us all retail accounts in the central bank, then perhaps payment banks and wallets will have to do something else to make themselves more attractive.
In fact, payment banks, at least we know the leading ones, have tried to become financial services companies. They're offering everything from mutual funds and stocks and gold, and not to mention cinema tickets and bus tickets. So they're diversifying to make their businesses work and become larger financial services companies. But one last point, Ela, before we go and take questions, we have a lot of questions on this. Uh, there is this point you make about, suppose you have an account with the RBI and you have uh, digital rupees with the RBI, and the RBI has to, you presume, pay interest, because if I keep money in my savings bank account, I get 3.5, 3, 4, whatever small percentage of interest they're giving you some interest. So if RBI also starts giving interest, and for RBI to make CBDC attractive, they will probably have to give a higher rate of interest, which means the banks will have to compete with RBI. I mean, it's quite what should I say?
Yeah. So if you think about it like this, that currently you are holding an RBI bond in your pocket, right? Effectively, RBI has told you it promises to pay you this much money with no interest. Okay. Whereas our back to back so this is on the liability side, cash is on the liability side.
Mm-hmm.
And back to back, there will be an asset, which is a government security, whether it's Government of India security or it is a US Treasury bill. Okay, so it holds both Forex and it holds GSECs. So either of the two that are interest yielding. So back to back, it's actually earning interest. Now, suppose it does digital rupees. For some time, yes, we can assume there'll be some, setting up costs, transaction systems to set up the systems, IT expenditure. Then there'll be IT expenditure on maintenance and all that. Yet it will save, in all probability, it will save on the cost of cash. Cash is expensive. I mean, as we heard during the Demon days, that you have currency notes, you either import paper or you try and produce that paper. That paper has to be special paper, polymer, or fiber, or depending on which country you are and what you choose. A few companies in the world produce that paper because it is a very specialized paper. The ink is very special, so it doesn't wash off and all that pink color doesn't come out.
Don't forget the chip that was supposed to be there in the 2000 rupee note, Ela.
So RBI is going to save money, lugging around coins from one place to the other, currencies, cash, those vans that run around. So it's going to save a lot of money. And then is it going to put it in its pocket and it goes at seigniorage to the government? Or does it provide interest on CBDCs? That's the question. So if it provides interest, then banks have to compete with it. So that's really what's going to happen.
That's really what's going to happen. It's fascinating. I can't wait for the CBDC. But let's go take questions now. Until then, Ela, let me see how many questions we have on CBDC. Oh, sorry, first one doesn't work. Shivansh Agarwal, you have answered this question, but I will anyway mention the question. Why is CBDC required when we already have UPI-based digital payments? I'm sorry, we have not answered this question. There's UPI is interbank transfers.
Yeah. So what we don't know is whether they'll do CBDC also through UPI. They might just choose to do that because that the UPI was also a government initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, countries that are adopting CBDCs are those that don't have something like UPI.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is very, very valid. Why do we need it when we have UPI? Now, I would say in a country where either UPI wasn't working and they thought the CBDC would work, both no reason why one works and the other doesn't work. But in a country like that, or in a country where there was high risk of bank failure, which we don't have, because we have public sector banks, and if I move money from my SBI account to my Canara Bank account, or to another account, public sector account, it's I'm very unlikely to have overnight risk in that it's going to go bankrupt, and so I need digital. So yeah, that's a very good question, which we hope the RBI will answer.
That is also the question of PK, who has been a member for 6 months. Thank you, PK. Ela has already answered your question. I will just read the question for our benefit. How is digital currency any different from normal currency as UPI already exists? We answered that.
Yeah. So let me just because just for the clarity of everyone, the digital currency will be directly the liability of the RBI. Okay. And these currencies are the liabilities of commercial financial institutions. So unless the RBI thinks that there is a risk currently in the country, high risk of failure, and is unable to regulate them, it really should say why their liability is not good enough. And that kind of then brings you to the question of then why bank deposits are not good enough, if you're going to put money in those. So these are very pertinent questions.
Vimarsh Chaturvedi, who's a member for the last 1 month. Thank you, Vimarsh. Are there any indications if the digital rupee will be based on blockchain? I think that has been talked about, that it will be based on blockchain, right, Ela?
Yeah, they've said so, but let's see what they do.
Second part of his question is the idea that I will start getting digital rupees in my bank accounts? We don't know.
No. This is a replacement for cash.
Cash. PK, again, how will I as an individual hold digital currency? Will it need a separate bank account? Do we know that?
No, if the RBI does retail digital rupees, then it will give you either an account in the RBI or tokens.
But I have a supplementary kind of a point there. Can the RBI handle, we don't know what the response will be, but can the RBI handle so many crores or millions of people we mentioned? Or will they then say, we give it to the banks, the commercial banks, the public sector banks to handle digital currency? You issue it through us.
Yeah, so that's really the point. That's really exactly the point. That's why I said, how many crores are we? Currently they have a few thousand in their RTGS system, the real-time gross settlement system, which is a system between banks. Okay, so the RBI gives a bank account to, let's say, 2 banks, and then when we make transactions, it goes through our bank accounts through the RTGS system. Now, that's just a few, and that also used to shut down on weekends, and it used to shut down after 5 o'clock, and it would happen 3 times a day. And now, of course, that has improved. So I guess by the time all of us get the digital rupee accounts, if that's going to happen, it will be quite a long wait. And in contrast, if it's going to put the digital money in the bank account, then how is it different from today? Because banks, that's also pretty digital. Right. Again, is it that what's the objective? If you do wholesale, if you do retail, what's the objective? What's the plan? What's the design? What are the timelines? We'll wait and see. That's really why I didn't want to focus on the supply side, because most of the time we are saying we don't know.
We don't know because the RBI has not told us. Mehul Lad is asking a very interesting question. In light of what is happening in Canada with government freezing bank accounts and seizing funds from people they don't like, does digital currency and widespread use of UPI increase the risk of something like this? So tomorrow, RBI might just say, I don't like you, I'm going to seize the money in your digital account.
I'd better be careful saying all these things about RBI, right?
Yes, Ela?
Yes. Yeah. So you see, that was one of the first points I made when I was comparing it with cash, that you don't have anonymity. And, it's pretty much a pervasive surveillance system. It's not a surveillance system in which you have to go and get, judge to sign off or home secretary to sign off and say, you want to watch what I'm doing with my money. No, it's a surveillance of everybody. RBI will have information on everybody. It can seize accounts of everybody. It can do whatever. So, I mean, not only do we need better checks and balances, better laws, a better well-functioning judiciary, system in which that absolutely should not happen, because otherwise people will, I mean, even now, why do we have so much use of cash? Because people prefer that. I mean, for whatever their reasons might be. And that is exactly why this question came up, in that RBI may supply a digital currency, but or even if it's, it's interest bearing, even if it's the technology is very good, even if it's blockchain, even if it's like, really, really efficient, fast, works in internet light mode or mobile. The question is, will people choose to move to it? Is it attractive? And that's the question we try to answer.
And mind you, Ila, there is already so much of tracking because of the PAN card, because of the amount of cash you can withdraw from your bank account. So there's a lot of tracking which already goes into your transactions, a certain limit, above a certain limit. Even if you go to a retail store and buy a expensive television set which costs above a certain limit, the television retailer will ask you for a PAN number. So the PAN number sort of tracks your transactions really, really closely. But obviously this will be even more tighter and closer than that.
Right, absolutely.
Som Buddha Kundu, we've already answered or tried to answer this question. CBDC for India is just a joke. Why do we need CBDC? We are trying to ask those questions ourselves. Lisa Porter, how would it be used if CBDC? How would CBDC be used if this crypto would be used by different countries? How to buy or exchange your CBDC with another country, with another government? Will the government allow this?
So there are governments talking about how to do cross-border transactions through CBDCs. Now, you could enter into an agreement with one government, where let's just suppose it's Singapore or some other country, where you say that we will make special arrangements and we get, there are lots of cross-border flows, and there will be basically the two central banks will do the job of what the forex market does today. So the central banks will do the job of converting, and there may be advantages in that, because maybe it can move faster. Maybe the fees that they charge, the commission that banks charge, which is pretty high for cross-border transactions and changing currencies, that may be less. So there may be various things, but it's at the stage of discussions. Because if you start doing it with all countries, it's going to be a very, very complex operation for central banks to get into. First, they will all have to have retail CBDCs. They should choose to do retail CBDCs. It should be useful for them to do those CBDCs. And then they should be able to do this exchange. Now, in India, an additional problem is that we have capital controls. So, yeah.
Yeah, apologies for that. There's a question from somebody's name. It's not very clear. It says, can CBDC be used in direct benefits transfer? I'm sure it can be.
Yeah, sure.
Not a.
Of course.
Mina, excuse me. That's my 1 week long cough sort of coming back. Apologies for that. Last question we have 2-3 questions, Ila. We'll try and wrap them up all. We've been on it for more than 30 minutes now. Minha Jamal Ansari says, don't you think Indian consumer is still financially immature to adopt digital?
Well, a lot of people have adopted digital. This is not UPI, Bheem, Paytm. The adoption of digital has been quite high after, especially in the pandemic. it has been quite high. So it's not that Indians don't use digital currencies. In fact, we use them more than many other countries.
Last two questions combined into one. Will CBDC beat private cryptocurrency?
That was the whole discussion.
Idea. Tejinder Singh, will digital currency be equivalent to Bitcoin, as in will it trade? We have talked about it. UPI, Prathamesh Mani Tiwari, we've answered that question also, Prathamesh, if you go back to the conversation. So I think, Ila, I think we've answered quite a bit. We've done more than 35 minutes of this conversation, and it's even been, I mean, all our conversations are fascinating, but this one is especially so because this is something we will be, probably dealing with in the coming months, at least next financial year, something maybe you'll have a CBDC in your phone, I will have a CBDC in my phone, and it will be probably called something more friendlier than CBDC.
Well, then we'll stop discussing RBI after that, right?
After that, we stop discussing RBI. We'll just praise RBI. Sorry, that is just us being.
So sorry, we are joking. Please don't take this seriously.
Yeah, we're just being funny. Friday evening. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Elonomics. We will be back next week again with another episode. Until then, please stay safe and